Part of the research process is developing a research proposal in which you'll write based off the literature, whatever your selected topic is, and propose it to a committee or some sort to get it approved so you can conduct a research study. Before a research study is conducted, the researchers write a proposal that must be approved by a person or a group of authority in order for the study to proceed. And this way, you'll be able to collect some data. But there are some good characteristics of writing a good research proposal that it contains, such as it identifies what the researcher wishes to investigate, also presents a compelling rationale as to why the proposed study should be conducted. So during this portion, you are looking at the literature, trying to fill out some gaps, and then also you're trying to sell why this is going to be a good study for you to conduct. Another characteristic is it will be able to explain how the study will be conducted, such as the methods. It will be another good characteristic is that it projects what the results are likely to be and why they are important. Again, this kind of ties into what is the importance of it and how it's going to fill in some other gaps within the literature. Possibly, depending on where you are submitting it to and everything along that. You'll also be writing or including a budget for the projected costs associated with conducting the study. So depending on where you're at in the university, you can apply for a grant, and with that grant money, you can get testing equipment such as lactate strips. You can get more gel if you're doing ultrasound measurements, or paper for printing out ultrasounds. You also can utilize it to buy new equipment that you don't have, which is also a good reason to apply for granting. And also, you can utilize this budget or the grant money that you may have obtained and apply it to the actual participants to kind of reward them for completing the study or participating in it. So some individuals, you might get a $100 gift card for completing the study, and so forth. And there might be different tiers where if you only complete half of the study, you'll only get half of the gift card. But if you complete the full study, then you'll get the full amount. And during this time, when you're talking about your equipment that you want to buy or why you're going to give money to the participants, you'll also be explaining why these costs are actually necessary. When we look into the research process, we have to see who might be approving this research proposal that you're writing. An absence of a good proposal is not likely to be approved by the Institutional Review Board, or the IRB, and this is where you get the permission to actually conduct the study. The granting agency, which may provide the funding for your equipment that you want to buy for the study that you may not have, or to apply some equipment costs, such as, again, like I mentioned a little bit on the last slide, ultrasound, gel for if you're taking ultrasound, some other equipment such as lactate strips and so forth. And lastly, probably a very important one that you may not consider is your faculty advisor or mentor and the committee, depending on whether you're doing a student project, such as your thesis, dissertation, your internship, or some sort of capstone project. Usually when you're talking about the committee, this is mainly geared towards individuals who are performing their thesis or dissertation. So not only do you have to have your research proposal approved by your faculty mentor, but also you have to explain to your committee members, this could be up to 3 other individuals, professors within the department, on why you want to conduct the study and why it's necessary. So you need their approval as well. Internship may be a little bit different. That number will vary. Same with the capstone project, you might just be dealing with your faculty advisor or mentor. Once you have the research proposal accepted, it serves 2 main purposes. So the research proposal provides an action plan for conducting the study. So this is basically your methodology of the sequential steps along the way you are conducting the study, such as what variables you're looking at, what testing apparatuses and instruments you are utilizing, what is the statistical analysis that you are going to run, and so forth. Another purpose that it serves is that it serves as a contractual agreement between the researchers and for those who have approved the proposal. So with this, once they accept it, that's basically your plan. So it's going to take multiple rounds of, fine tuning your plan and research proposal. But if you, kind of go along the way of whenever you are collecting the data and find some things that might be needed to add, which you didn't think during beforehand. You can as long as it's a non-trivial change, you can submit it again and it can be approved again. So you can kind of continue on with your research study. If it's something big that's going to change the whole research study in itself, then you have to kind of rewrite the whole proposal and then hopefully get it submitted and approved. But usually if it's such a big change, they're not going to allow that revision, and you're just going to have to deal with whatever you wrote originally. Probably the most hardest portion of writing a research proposal is actually selecting a topic area. So usually for new students or beginners or undergraduates who've never written before, actually selecting a topic is going to be very difficult, and it can be very intimidating. So when you think of this research proposal, we want it to be very specific. So, it's good to have, so most of you will probably have a general idea of what you want to write about. It could be nutrition and exercise, but when you are writing the proposal, this has to be more fine-tuned and more specific. So whenever you propose it to the committee, they know exactly what you're looking for. So for instance, you want to write about carbohydrates beforehand and how it affects the athlete's performance rather than nutrition exercise. So having that specific area of looking at carbohydrates before working out and athletes' performance will give a better kind of overall aspect to the individuals you are proposing it to. When you look at established researchers out there, they've been typically working on the line of that area for a long time, and that's usually they have a pretty strong background and they develop their expertise. So this is where if you go to your master's program, or more specifically if you go to a doctorate program, you're more so going towards your mentors or that faculty's line of research. So if you're interested in nutrition and exercise, you want to find professors or researchers who's really at the top of that area. If you're more aligned with strength and conditioning or anything of that, you have to try to find individuals with that background. So the last thing is that part of this topic selection is that a sound research proposal may be actually time consuming. So this can overwhelm the student. When we're talking about time consuming, is that we're talking about different tasks within this. So we're talking about actually finding the literature out there through your different search engines. After you find the literature that you are interested in, you have to actually read everything. So you just don't want to read the abstracts. You want to read the whole paper. You may have to read it a few times to get a better understanding. Sometimes whenever you read a paper, it's not going to be good and you may feel like it's just wasting your time, but it's important because you might utilize that within your research proposal on saying this is possibly a study where there's some conflicts and this is where it needs some area of improvement. So there are different approaches for selecting a topic area for your thesis, dissertation, or other research project in which you have to write a research proposal for. So one of them is you can talk with your faculty advisor or mentor. Usually with this, even though that your faculty mentor may have a strong interest in a specific area and has developed, a line of research and, is an expertise in a certain area, they do also know other areas within the exercise science field and other research areas. It may not be, as in depth or as knowledgeable compared to the research that they do, but they still know and have a good understanding of what's kind of required, some expectations and so forth in the different areas. You can also talk with other faculty and senior graduate students. So even though your faculty mentor or advisor has a specific line of research, other faculty members within the department have different lines of research in which you can talk to and gain insight and then a little bit background of that area. You can actually talk to senior graduate students, just because with them they're going through the process, or they've gone through the process of trying to find a topic area to write about, and you can talk about them about their experience, whether that's working with a certain faculty member, performing research, or kind of their suggestions based off of what they found useful. Another thing for identifying a topic area is reading the research literature relating to your interests. So again, if you want to take an example of an athletic performance aspect and how nutrition affects it, you can look at all the nutrition articles relating to athletes' performance, and you can look at different macronutrients such as protein, carbohydrates, fats. You can also look at supplements and how they affect the athlete's performance, different strategies, but just make sure that you are actually reading the literature in the actual original research papers and just not the abstract, so you get a better understanding. So possibly by reading a paper, this may spark some sort of light bulb in your head, and then you can figure out or actually hone in to that specific topic area that you want to write about. Another one is attending conferences where research of interest is being presented. So whenever you go to these national conferences, even regional conferences, there's a bunch of research that is being presented, such as posters, thematics, which are a short presentation over a poster, and there's actual long presentations on a certain topic area. With this, you are talking to other researchers and other students around the world, just because this is a big national conference, so you can talk to them and get insight on and talk about the area of interest that you are thinking about, or you just have more questions about. So it's always a good strategy to have, and also it's a good networking aspect as well. You can also look towards graduate students. Usually when you're talking about graduate students, and particularly if you're a graduate student going into your master's or your doctorate, you already have a strong interest already in the research topic area, so that's why you're going to school for your master's or doctorate. But when we're thinking about this, your faculty mentor during your graduate studies can assign you a topic for your thesis or provide strong guidance. So again, you're going there for mainly their line of research, but along with that, after you read the literature and so forth, start developing your own critical thinking skills and questions. You can talk to your mentor and kind of fill in what's needed and what type of research study that you want to conduct. Once you get to PhD level or doctorate, you should be capable of actually developing researchable questions independently. So this is where most of the time your mentor is going to help guide you throughout the whole process, but they're going to be a little bit hands off, so it's really for you to establish yourself and actually thinking and developing these studies to answer the questions. So once you graduate, you can start continuing your research, and then hopefully also developing students and mentoring students and continuing that lineage. Once you have identified the general area of research interest that you've selected, the next step is developing the research question. We just kind of mentioned about this. This is where you're taking that broadened approach by reading the literature that's out there, that you're trying to figure out, talking with your faculty mentor, your other faculty members of the department, and then other students as well. This is where the portion is going to be fine-tuning that and being really specific. And this is, with the research question, is the focal point or the driving force for the study that you are wanting to conduct. But also, this is referred to as the problem statement, since it's usually presented in the form of a statement rather than the question itself. But during this problem statement, this is going to contain the major independent and dependent variables of interest, and also important to identify the actual population being studied. So with that being said, you want to look at the young population, middle age or disease population, or even the elderly. So by selecting a certain population, that will also help kind of refine your problem statement, and also by doing so, this after your finding, you can kind of generalize it to that specific population itself. Not only that, but your problem statement should be of interest and importance. So when you're thinking of that, you have to be kind of specific, like I've mentioned before, but we need to be specific enough to answer questions. So again, we can take the same example that I've been going over, looking at athletic performance and nutrition, but again, we need to be specific enough on actually answering the question of how does nutrition affect athletic performance. Also, an important thing is you have to, whenever you're looking at your problem statement, is actually looking at the equipment available for you to conduct. So you might have this great study that will help answer the question that you want about nutrition and athletic performance, but you have to have that specialized equipment, and depending at the university you're at, you may not have that. Also, if you are trying to apply for a grant and in hopes of utilizing that money to buy the equipment and you're rejected, that's just kind of another setback for you. So that might alter your thinking of collecting the data for that research study. But your problem statement or research question, the idea and the exact wording must be approved by your mentor before writing the actual proposal. So you'll give them the general idea, but then you'll to your mentor, but really you have to fine tune that. So hopefully you'll get that research proposal approved the very first time, rather than making these revisions and submitting it back again. A good problem statement has different characteristics or criteria. One of them is being important, which is clearly important or of potential value or use either generally or to some group for a particular reason. Another one is interesting, so meaning of interest either generally or to some group for a particular reason. It should also be novel, which has meaning that it hasn't already been answered before or actually been performed for a research study. It should also contain, it should be researchable, which can be addressed through the collection and analysis of data. Another characteristic is being practical. So when we're thinking about a good problem statement, where you have the necessary equipment to perform the research study, the expertise to follow along with that, access to participants, and time are all available for everyone to collect the data, for participants to come in at their time that best fits kind of their schedule, and also allowing that time that they come in to be appropriate for your data collection for certain time point measurements. Also, it should be clearly stated. So this is meaning written in a straightforward, readily comprehensible manner using appropriate research writing. And it should also, another good characteristic is timely. So one that addresses a current problem or issue currently and how it can affect the line of research in the future. The next step in developing a research proposal is the identification of one or more hypotheses. So a research hypothesis is the researcher's own expectation as to the outcome of the study. This expectation should be based on the understanding of the research problem and analysis of what is known about the topic based on the related literature. With the research hypothesis, this is going to follow immediately after the problem statement. And when you're looking at your research hypothesis or hypotheses, this is going to be either accepted or rejected based on your study results. So here's just an example of a research hypothesis. So we have the problem statement, which is, given the mixed findings of the previous literature, the primary purpose of the current study was to test the effects of acute aerobic exercise on long-term memory. So the hypothesis would be, based off the authors, would be, we hypothesize that participants engaging in acute exercise would perform better on the recall task than those not performing any exercise. So it's fine to have one strong research question or problem statement for an undergraduate or master's thesis. Researchers often conduct projects to investigate two or more related questions, and this is termed as specific aims. Each specific aim has one or more research hypotheses associated with it. So the next couple slides, we're going to go over the specific aims. And for example, here's a research question. The research question is looking and studying the effects of stretching protocols on ankle function. So here we have an example of specific aims. So specific aim number 1 is to determine the effects of 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and 120 seconds static stretches on ankle range of motion after 0, 10 minutes, and 20 minutes. So the hypothesis would be the ankle range of motion will increase with increased stretching duration. A second specific aim is to determine the effects of 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and 120 seconds of static stretching on plantar flexor peak torque after 0, 10, and 20 minutes. And the hypothesis would be the plantar flexor peak torque will decrease with increased stretch duration. After the wording has been agreed upon for the research problem or research question, and for the specific aims if you have any, the next step in the development of a research proposal is writing the rationale for the proposed study. So this rationale is presented in the introduction to a thesis or dissertation, as well as the introduction to a research paper. And when we're looking at the research paper version of the rationale, this is going to be very condensed compared to the thesis and dissertation. But a rationale for the study does contain some good characteristics or criteria, such as 1, it introduces the topic and makes it clear why it is of importance. Also, the rationale explains how the study results will fill a gap in the related literature. And also, this leads the reader down a path that ends with a clear understanding as to why the study should be conducted. Lastly, a good characteristic for developing the rationale for the study is that it ends with a problem statement or specific aims. There are 2 important points to keep in mind when writing the rationale for a proposal. First, it is invaluable to begin with a basic outline of the sequential points you wish to make and leading the reader to understand why the proposed study should be conducted. Secondly, the rationale is not a full-blown literature review. Remember, a literature review can be very long in nature. With this rationale, we want to keep it concise and cite only the studies of direct relevance. So when we are doing this rationale, if we are incorporating too many studies, this can be confusing and then hard for the reader to follow. So for example, when we're including too many studies, this is referring to them specifically. So when you're writing, this would be an example for saying, for example, Smith and colleagues found this, this, and this. And then, the next sentences or next section you would be writing would be, Brown and colleagues found this, this, and this. If they both have similar findings of, say, they both found that carbohydrates eaten 20 minutes before exercise increased athletic performance, you would say Smith and Brown found that eating carbohydrates 20 minutes before exercise increased the athlete's performance, rather than breaking it down within each study that was being conducted. So this is, flows a lot more better. It's synthesized a lot better, and it's not, leading the reader to be confused just because if you, give, so many examples of original research papers and not having it synthesized, that's where the reader will get lost, and then it won't really make sense for the whole rationale, right? And it's not also going to flow. Here's an example of a hypothetical rationale for our 2 specific aims related to the 3 stretching durations for the ankle plantar flexors, what we talked about a few slides ago. So this outline kind of breaks it down on some main points where 1, you can talk about reasons why stretching protocols are thought to be useful, and then follow that by reasons why stretching protocols may not be useful. And you can see the next one on providing that rationale to the reader or audience or some sort of faculty member or committee is providing reasons to investigate the effects of different stretching durations, and then reasons to monitor effects of stretching on a range of motion and then strength. So this is just, again, hypothetical, an example for you guys. So whenever you actually start writing a research proposal, trying to find your outline or trying to figure out where to start, this can be a good starting point for you. When planning the methodology for the study, a method section is the key opponent of both the research proposal, where it is written before the research study is being conducted, and then when we're looking at the research paper manuscript, this is where the methods section is written after the study is being conducted. When we're looking at this method section, this is going to include a very careful, detailed, and comprehensive description of all the proposed methods. When we're looking at these proposed methods, we want to be very detailed. So the level of detail should be that when another researcher reads this, they could use the methods to replicate that study. So if you have a participant drink some sort of drink or have them consume some sort of liquid, depending on the study, you have to explain the exact amount. So if they're if you limit them to drinking 500 milliliters for that sitting, you have to incorporate that. You just can't say they drank some water after the exercise. There are times, depending on the certain variable, where it can be whatever amount, and this is often referred to ad libitum. So when we refer to that, that's meaning freely and as much as they want or as little as they want, just as long as they're being satisfied. But with this method section and how it relates to the proposal, when you're writing in future tense, and then following the research study, this is written in past tense. So again, we want to be very detailed of these proposed methods. Also with these methods, we want to make sure that we are incorporating all of the available equipment that we have, looking at our certain time points that we have looked at through different testing, and just looking at past literature on what measurements that they performed. Did they just perform a before and after test? With yours, you might incorporate a mid-time testing measurement, and then you might expand that after testing to a few days, just to see, to make your research study a lot stronger, and to actually see if there's some sort of time component. Once you have a clear, sound, and detailed understanding of exactly what you wish to propose, the method section is typically the quickest and easiest section of the proposal to actually write. But getting to the point of clear, sound, and detailed understanding, though, is typically a process. But with this method section, the method section is commonly organized into 3 different main sections, and this is describing the participants, the research protocol, and the statistical analysis. When we are describing the participants, we are actually looking at the number of participants or subjects, which must be specified in our research proposal in our manuscript. So with this, describing our participants, we are providing some sort of descriptive data. We are looking at the means and standard deviations of different characteristics, such as the age, the height, the weight or body mass, and then any other relevant variables depending on your research question. If you are looking at kind of the resistance training literature, you may see the training status for this, and this can vary. So you can have a sedentary training status, so not working out. You can have or classify the participants as recreationally active. So that means that they, are pretty active. So they're involved in like intramurals of like playing basketball, softball, golfing, but they don't actually have a structured exercise program. You can classify individuals as being trained, so meaning that they have been training for so many times per week and for so many months. And then you can also classify them as, well-trained, as meaning hitting a certain percentage of their body weight in a particular lift. Usually that's, what you're looking at squat, that's usually 2 times the individual's body weight. Bench press is about, 1.5 times their body weight. So that's how some researchers classify individuals as well-trained. You could also have, not only going back to the sedentary training status, but also untrained. With untrained, that you can have a lot of different meaning, where generally speaking, individuals who haven't trained in the past 6 months, as far as following a structured program. Also, during this section, whenever you are describing the participants, you are including the inclusion and exclusion criteria and the selection procedures. So what is the inclusion criteria to actually participate in the study? Usually, you have to be within a certain, BMI or body mass index range. You may have individuals not, smoke, have past injuries, depending on your research question. So your exclusion criteria can vary. Your exclusion criteria can vary as well. So if you have individuals who, are taking any supplements on, just for example, our research paper that we looked at on the pre-workout study, if participants who were interested in the study took a supplement, then they were excluded from actually participating in the study. And your selection procedures is just kind of similar, and this is, did they fit that criteria of inclusion and exclusion? Lastly, when you're describing the participants in this section, we have to make a statement assuring that all participants signed an informed consent documents. So this informed consent is just giving the participants the option and stating, what they'll be doing for the study, some of the side effects, and then that they have kind of the option to withdraw without any penalty. So that's very important. The next section of the method section is looking at the protocol section, and this is where everything the participants are required to do. During this time, this is looking at who will be collecting the data, how, when, and where the data will be collected. So when we look at the who for our data collection, there may be some times where you are performing some sort of collaboration with another researcher where they'll be doing a portion of the data collection on which the certain measurement you have very little experience in. The how is describing how you're collecting it. Is it sort of through some sort of testing apparatus, or is it through different means? And then what type of equipment are you utilizing to actually measure this? Are you utilizing a bench press? Are you utilizing a machine bench press? What measurement or kind of testing equipment are you utilizing? When usually you always want to have a certain time frame on when you want the participants to either do their training or do their certain testing measurements. So when we think about this, usually we want to have at least a pre to post or a pre and post measurement, so a before and after our protocol. But you can also incorporate other time points within that, such as a midline. You can also incorporate more additional midline, or not mid post, but other measurements between the before and after to kind of get a better sense of the overall picture. And then the where would be, where are you collecting it? Is it in a laboratory? Is it, in some sort of, fitness facility or laboratory setting that's a little bit off campus compared to the university? But we also want to list specific times, just because that may affect the participants or your actual results. So we want these just because it may be crucial in determining the response following some sort of intervention. So if you have individuals consuming some sort of, say, protein following exercise, you want to see, the different time points and how it affects, say, muscle growth. Is there, a time frame where you want to have protein in, or doesn't it really matter? So that's where you may have one group consuming protein 30 minutes after working out, one group consuming, an hour after working out, another group may be consuming an hour and a half after working out. When you are looking at the pre and post measurements, you usually want to keep that time frame, similar to each other. So if you have the individual lift or perform a test at 8 a.m., you want at least, plus or minus 2 hours around that time. But that's just to kind of control the factor of, diurnal changes. So meaning that, the response could be different, or, the participant give you a different response if they came in later, later in that day compared to their normal time period. Part of the describing the protocol section, particularly if you are looking at your thesis, is that you are probably going to have a term that is ambiguous, or for which some sort of definition may need some sort of context specific, and this is known as a operational definition. And just to give you an example, when we look at static stretch of the plantar flexors, we might utilize an operational definition as a maximal passive stretch performed by a trained physical therapist, or alternatively, we can utilize an operational definition as a voluntary active stretch performed by the participant to the point of discomfort. With the operational definitions, these are usually only required for the terms that appear within the problem statement or that are used in describing key elements of the protocol. So it is not necessary or appropriate to provide a special definition for every term you are utilizing or describing in the study protocol. Within the protocol section, it's very important to convey that standardized procedures will be utilized and that every participant will be treated identically and without bias. So if you recall from the beginning of the semester, this is very essential for convincing the reader that the proposed study is designed to have a strong internal validity. So if you have any directions that you are giving the participants during this protocol, and if they're complicated, it's best to kind of state within the proposal or the manuscript that written instructions were given and read to the participants, so that they kind of know on what to do and they follow the exact same thing. So this is going to kind of help with your results. Other things is that when we are kind of looking at the procedures, you also don't want to have any bias. So meaning that if you have one participant, say they may be completing repetitions, but one does a little bit over a half rep, but you count for that participant a full rep. So rather than 25, since they have that 3/4 of rep, you round it up to 26. But if another participant did that, and they did the same thing, you didn't round that up, that's considered bias. So rather than hitting 26, you rounded it back down to 25, where the other participant did the same thing, but you rounded it up for them. Another portion of the describing the protocol is that a detailed description of all the apparatuses, such as the equipment that's being utilized and the instruments that are being utilized, such as questionnaires. So these are two different things. So an apparatus is laboratory equipment used in a research investigation. During this time, whenever you are writing the manuscript itself, you may include the manufacturer's name and the model number. So again, this is becoming, relating to the method section of being very detailed. So if another researcher wanted to perform the same study, they would know the exact same equipment that you utilize, just because if you're using a machine-based equipment, those plates and machines, they vary in resistance. So you might notice this, but if you utilize a machine utilizing say 50 pounds, and you go to a different machine brand company and utilize their 50 pounds, it might be lighter or it might be heavier. So that's why it's important to include the manufacturer name and model number. When we're looking at instruments, these are questionnaires utilized in a research investigation. This is in different forms. You can go old school and use pencil and paper. You can use a computer, or you can use an interview type process. But if you have these questionnaires which have been published and then have been standardized papers throughout the literature, you must provide the citation for that paper or for that kind of instrument that you are utilizing for your research study. Some proposal formats require statements disclosing the researcher's knowledge of assumptions, limitations, and delimitations associated with the proposed study protocol. So when we look at assumptions, this is made by the researcher about what the participants do or do not do. So we can make the assumption that if we have participants perform a food log while they're not in the laboratory, we are assuming that they are going to do that. So that they are going to write down what they ate, what time they ate, and then how much they ate. We can also look at the limitations, and the limitations are, unavoidable errors or equipment failures that constitute weakness in the study. Part of the limitations is that this can also be found within the discussion section of your, paper, and this can be a subheading within that section itself, kind of like the conclusion. But part of your limitations is, it can be looking at the sample size. So by looking at the sample size, it may not be big enough as far as the number wise goes to actually be meaningful for your research study. Just because, we don't want to have too less because it's not going to mean anything. And then also we don't want to have, so much that, we're going to eventually just find the answer that you want to find. So we have to find that appropriate balance. Another limitation that you can kind of, look at, or, that's kind of unavoidable, is the population selection. So you may be looking at how the responses compare to college males and females. But the limitation of that is that, you're not incorporating the middle-aged individuals or incorporating the elderly. So what you find based on your results can't be generalized to the middle-aged or the elderly population or any other population as well. So you kind of setting some sort of, delimitation, which we'll talk here in a little bit about. Another limitation could be dropouts. So it's, unfortunate, but you get that at times whenever you are performing research. Participants, particularly human participants, aren't always reliable. And things happen as well. But you may have individuals, participate for the first few weeks and then all of a sudden just drop out. So you can't do anything with their data, or input that into the research paper after you complete the study. There are some other limitations along also, but we're not going to get into much of that. I guess before I move on to the next portion, one of the biggest limitations, though, that you see within the resistance training literature is not including females, where they'll only include male subjects. We kind of looked at that in the Lowry paper, where they only recruited and looked at male participants, and they didn't include any female participants. So that's definitely a big limitation for that research study. Lastly, delimitations are, kind of setting boundary conditions deliberately, and this is usually chosen by the researchers. So we're, setting some sort of constraints on the external validity or generalizability of the results of the study. So this kind of ties into your limitations of population selection, where again, if you are recruiting college males and females, their results aren't going to generalize to the elderly. So same thing. In this case, you're just kind of setting your limit. So, different ways to get around that is, possibly performing the study in college-aged males and females, and then performing, the same sort of study, but in the elderly, to see if, the elderly have a different response, or if they have a similar response to college males and females. Part of the research process is pilot testing. So pilot testing is preliminary small-scale experiments conducted during the planning of a study or before the real data collection. So there are different reasons to actually conduct pilot testing. One, this is to determine which dependent variables are important and practical to measure. Two, is able to learn or practice conducting the procedures. So during this time, you may have gotten a new piece of equipment that you never utilized. So this is a time to actually practice the measurement, so you can see what the issues are, some limitations of the device, or even yourself on what you can or cannot do with it. And also to kind of get familiar with the software if it contains anything, or also just getting a lot of practice so whenever you actually start collecting the data, you kind of go straight into it and have a good idea and understanding, and it's very quick for the participant. Another one is to determine how long it will take to test each participant, and this is very important just because as for your proposal that you're submitting, All right, you want to kind of give some sort of time frame, and also this is going to give the participant an understanding and time frame as well of how long a visit is. So you don't want to just not have a time frame or give a time frame where if you estimate the time or just give a time of say 20 minutes, but the actual protocol for the participant is 30 or 35 minutes, then the participant may have not planned that. They may have to, with human research, they may have to go somewhere that's a little bit more, that they had in their calendar, so they may have to leave early. So then you want to be able to collect that data or finish the data collection for that day, which can, be a little bit cumbersome, but just something to realize that, determining the time it takes for each testing that you do or the protocol is very important. Another one is to determine whether the data will address the research question. So we want to make sure that we are answering the problem statement that you came up with. Part of that can be looking at the measurement that you're trying to take, such as, or that you're practicing as well. So this reason of conducting pilot testing can encompass multiple factors. So you may think on paper and in your head that's a good idea, and the actual measurement is a good idea, but whenever you actually practice, the whole testing and perform the whole say run through, it's really not feasible, and it's really not going to address the research question appropriately unless you say had another piece of equipment available to you somehow. Lastly, a good reason to conduct pilot testing is to determine how many participants will be needed. And this is kind of referring back to the previous slide where, you want to have that right amount of participants to observe some sort of effect for that. And we can utilize software programs. You can utilize statistical analysis power. And by utilizing that, you can determine how many participants you need to see something or, be effective. If a study involves the development of an instrument, pilot testing is crucial. So this ensures the questionnaire items are clear and understandable to the participants. By doing so, this makes sure that there isn't any misinterpretation or confusion from the participants, and that you know that what question you are kind of writing down is going to help answer your research question for the research study. So we already kind of went through some good reasons on why we need to conduct pilot testing, but here are some additional things. Again, we can with pilot testing is give an estimate of the variability within the data set, so we can help calculate and determine the sample size based on the level of statistical power required. So remember, the sample size is the number of participants involved in the study. So I just mentioned that on reasons why we conduct pilot testing is determining participants needed, and I just again gave you the example of the statistical power analysis that's required. Not only that, lastly, with pilot testing, this can strengthen your proposal if you're kind of incorporating it into it. And this is by doing pilot testing, you're demonstrating the capability of performing the study and lend support to your hypothesis, just because you kind of can get a good understanding of what you would be able to expect to see just through a couple individuals through pilot testing. Final section of the methods is generally a description of all statistical analysis planned for the study. So you may be surprised to learn that you will need to know exactly how you will be analyzing your data before they are even collected. So this is absolutely essential because it is important that all the data you collect can be analyzed using conventionally accepted tests and the appropriate tests for that. And this is going to be based on the groups, your measurement time points, and the variables that you're looking at. Most of the time, you are going to provide the statistical software that you are utilizing to answer these different variables and your research question to get the results. And that statistical software is going to be SPSS. Usually, when you look at the statistical analysis portion, this is written usually only in one paragraph in length. The title and abstract are the first things that the readers see, but whenever you are actually writing a research proposal or original research paper, these are usually written last. By doing so, if you are writing a research paper or proposal, by writing the title of it, there's a strong likelihood that you'll be revising the title multiple times, as your thoughts on your research problem become more focused and then refined. But there are some good things about a title, but a good title is that it captures the reader's attention. And also, it accurately and concisely conveys the essence of the proposed research problem. So, in your title, you're not, restating the research problem, but you're, again, like a good proposed title is, captures the reader's attention. So if you have a really long research title, say the effects of 24 hours of some sort of supplement, pre and post intervention, and then choosing different time points and then looking at a different score, that's not very ideal. So you can kind of condense it and be more concise on your terminology, and decreasing the wordage. So remember, we talked about this. Less words are a lot easier and better for the reader. It's more concise. So if you can say something in less words compared to more words, it's going to be more comprehensible and a lot more attractive in reading it. Research proposals are written in different lengths and formats depending on the target audience. There are several common target audience for research proposals, one of them being the Institutional Review Board, or the IRB. And this is the official body that must approve all proposed research studies involving human participants, and this is being conducted at either a college or university, the hospital or a clinic, or other research facility. So, as mandated by the federal law, the IRB approval of a research proposal must occur prior to any collection of data. So, when planning a timeline for a research project, it is important to find out how often the IRB at the university reviews proposals, when they are scheduled to meet, and then how much lead time they require for a review of proposals prior to their meetings. So, this is very important just because if you are, say, looking at, some sort of intervention for 12 weeks and are utilizing it within a school semester, you have to factor in, Thanksgiving break, where, most of the students go home. So if that, your timeline is pushed from, later into the semester rather than at the start, that may cause some sort of limitation for you, and you may not get all the data you need. Another target audience is the Animal Protection Review Committee, and this is only when appropriate when utilizing animals. Another big one, target audience, is the funding source. This could be the college or university, a professional organization, state or federal agency, or foundation. So if you get accepted from this funding source that you propose, that can be very good for you. That demonstrates that you can get funding on your own, so that makes you more attractive as a kind of employee or applicant for a job. And also, you can put it on your CV or resume. The last target audience or common target audience is your faculty advisor and committee. When we think about that, you are going to write your proposal, and then you are going to have them give you feedback after you've written your draft and you proofread everything. By doing so, your faculty advisor or mentor and your committee members are going to give you feedback and kind of give you some questioning on your proposal and making sure that you are filling the gap within the literature. They also might make some recommendations of some of your data collections, such as whether it could be a timing for one of your apparatuses, or a timing point for your measurement. And also they can provide you some other helpful hints, such as statistical analysis tests, possibly maybe asking the sample size, They can also give you some literature that you may have overlooked, or some literature that might be beneficial for your proposal as well. But overall, these are the kind of main target audience for when you're writing a research proposal. But just kind of know that the biggest obstacle, or probably the main one that you want to focus on, is the institutional review board, and then probably the following rank would be your faculty advisory committee, and then funding source.